Welcome to the Sport Media and Tech Podcast. On today's episode, we talk with Asaf Nevo about how his organization got its start and how currently they're helping brands get personal with their fans and knowing when the best time is to engage with them through social media. Stay tuned to learn more.
I'd like to introduce you Asaf Nevo from Pico. How are you doing, Asaf?
Hey, how are you guys doing? I'm well.
Doing great.
We also have Mark Kochkin, and the three of us today are going to dive into engaging with fans online, remotely, and through digital media, especially through social media. So, Asaf, your background is really interesting. It's very entrepreneurial. So I'd like to start just by asking you if you could share a little bit about how you got your start and where the idea for Pico came from.
Oh, sure. It's a great question, and actually, it's a pretty interesting story. I'll try to keep it short. So I'm 36 now, and I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 23. And my first entrepreneurial, the first stop in my entrepreneurial journey was me and one of the co-founders of Pico. We established a very big pub, a bar, in our hometown in Haifa, Israel, where still Pico's headquarters is located. And actually, Pico's headquarters is right around the corner of the same pub we used to have. The incentive for that was that we were really excited about building businesses, and we're still, 15 years later, we're still excited about building stuff. That's our number one incentive for everything we do, but we also wanted to really feel how it is to be business owners and how does it actually works and succeed. And then 8 years later, we kind of got bored from running the bar, and we were looking for new adventures. And the idea of Pico, the initial idea of Pico came up. It was 2013, maybe the beginning of 2014. And we said that we must create a photo sharing app, because when I got married, we saw so many people taking pictures of me and my wife, and we said, hey, we want to have this great content in our phones. 2013, it's hard to imagine, but it's a year without Instagram. No selfies, no duck faces, still, none of this still exists, a simpler world. And we built a great photo sharing app. It worked pretty well, but then Facebook acquired Instagram and nobody cares about us anymore. So we had to decide whether we shut down or we pivot, and we decided to pivot. Actually, as a trivia note, I would say that Pico is initial for picture collector, because this was our very initial thought of what we want to do. Along the way, it took us a while to find the right market fit and the right pivot, but the very basic idea was that we want to provide businesses with the ability to really understand what their attendees or audience is doing, and by understanding that, to be able to create a better experience for them. And although Pico now is a bit different, I would say this is the main foundation of what we came up with. And along the way, we found the right market fit and build the right technology and establish the company around that. But to be really transparent, the very initial thought and incentive for Pico was to understand the fans or the audience and to create a better experience. With the pub was, first of all, a very good business school. And that's something people not always understand, because running a bar, it's one of the toughest things from a business standpoint that you could actually do. It's a very closed market. There's like 1% up and down every year in the entire market size. So there's no really place for innovation or for new ideas, because the market is very closed. And it's very complicated to manage, because you have employees and inventory and all that, cash flow and all that. So I think from a business standpoint, this set up the ground for us to be able to run a bigger business like Pico, who deals, with lots of investments and lots of customers and big customers. It gave us the ground for managing a big operation. The incentive, I think, was less, I keep saying incentive, that's maybe not the right word, but the inspiration for starting Pico was not necessarily from watching people watch sport as much as it was something that we felt technologically. I think that's a problem we try to solve many times in different ways of, we don't really know the people who are coming to the bar. Like, the bar was big, it has like 250 seats every cycle. In weekends, we could have 2, 3, 4 cycles every night. You see the people, they're getting in, they're buying beers, we're saying hi, we know, some of them we know more, some of them we don't know at all. But at the end, you have lots of customers that you have no idea who they are. And I think this was the first understanding, even if we didn't understand it back then, but this was the first things that really bothered us, because during the life cycle of the bar, we did develop some simple technology that will allow us to understand who those people are better. And I think that experience really shines now when we're doing pretty much the same thing for sports teams. Different technology, different processes, different industry, but the core fundamental is pretty much similar. So it's definitely, looking back, it's definitely a pretty well settled path. We just didn't know that back then. Like, we didn't know that's where it's going to end. So I think it's all connected. When someone's hearing the story from the outside, they sometimes don't understand how the dots connect, but they do, because for us as being inside of this, we learn, we grew, we took the experiences we have, and we replicated inside different needs and different problems.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you pivoted and saw that opportunity to help teams and leagues and organizations really identify their fans and start categorizing them into different demographics through their actions on social media. So I'm curious, Asaf, how do you take those categorizations and activate them, or how do you identify them to activate with the data that you're recording?
So first of all, it's less about the demographic as much as it is about finding ways to engage with fans on a personal level. So through this engagement, we can actually learn what you as a fan has as unique preferences. Because the end result, the vision of Pico, is to make sure that every time you engage with the team, whether it's on Facebook, on Twitter, or whether you call the customer service, or whether you're now engaged through a sponsorship activation, we want to make sure the team knows who you are. And when they're knowing who you are, then they can start and make sure that the content that you're exposed to is the content you actually care about. And then when you're receiving offers, or for merchandise, for tickets, for seasonal ticket, whatever, first of all, you're relevant. And second of all, that you would actually want to get them, because we don't want to make the fans are happy or to spam them. Just as an example, if you are now, I'm in Israel and I'm a fan of the 76ers, probably I'm not the best one to receive a newsletter about that I should buy tickets for tomorrow's game, right? Assuming that at some point we'll have regular games. And this information just does not exist in sports. Actually, it doesn't exist in many other industries. But I think in sports, the gap between, I would say, there's maybe two gaps. The first gap is how many people teams actually have in their database, which is mostly contain transactional information, meaning that if you end up buying a ticket, we know who you are because we have your email address and we're now going to send you the newsletter, compared to how many people actually following teams. And when you're looking at the big clubs, the NBA, the NFL, in Germany, the Bundesliga, the Premier League in the UK, you see clubs that have, 500,000 people in their database, 1 million people in their database maybe, but 30 million people following them across, the fan base is 30 million. So if you're comparing 1 million to 30 million or 500,000 to 30 million, that's like 98% of fans you didn't even know. And I'm not even talking about demographics. You don't know who they are. You have no idea anything about them. You don't own any data about them. And that's the first gap. The second gap is that teams are spending so much on engaging with fans. Every pro team now has a Facebook channel, a Twitter channel, a website, an app, a TikTok channel, maybe if they're advanced. They might have a WeChat or a Lime channel if they're working in Asia. They have all these. They have a call center, they have email blasts, they have text messaging. I counted almost 10 without even trying. And at the end of the day, they could engage, again, the content team, the marketing team could engage with 30 million fans, but then the CRM department, the sponsorship team, the sales team, the merchandise team, they would only be able to engage with those 500,000 people that are in the database. The gap of different departments that does not communicate with each other and does not sit on the same data set and does not even think that when you're posting something over Facebook, you can learn who this person who just liked your post is. You can get his information and you can then understand how to retarget them And I don't mean retargeting in a bad way of, showing ads. I mean retargeting in making sure that they're receiving the content and the offer that matters for them. That's something teams just don't have these days, and that's what we're helping them solve.
Yeah, Asaf, it's really interesting as you share all of the data that's available through social media, but the lack of data that teams have to activate on. And something that you said really stood out, and it's around sponsorship. So in terms of sponsorship activations, the value, especially right now without fans in the stands, the value for sponsors is going to be activating digitally. So I think of a previous company I worked with. It's called Insurance Office of America. They work with over 30 sport teams. They sell and have built, while I was there, now have grown it tremendously since my time after, a personal lines agency. Now they partner with these sport teams, but how much more of an advantage would it be to a sports team to be able to say to a company like theirs, we can deliver content to our audience when we know these fans not only are fans of our team, but they're looking at car dealership websites, or looking at new cars on Facebook or things. So it's delivering that message of being the official sponsor or the official insurer of that team at the right time. Not just delivering the message broadly, but targeted at the right time in a custom way to the right people. So
add up to what you said. If you're also adding an additional layer, currently sponsors are usually paying for receiving eyes on screen or eyes on billboard. That's what's happening in stadiums. We are saying a good sponsor, a digital sponsor who understands how the digital space actually works, would come in and ask for seeing traction. So it's not only about how many messages you're delivering in the right context. If you're an insurance company, we need to help you sell more insurances. And this is a KPI that is not being measured now. If you're Papa John's and you're selling pizzas and you are sponsoring a team, and that's our job as Pico, and our job is to help teams to get there. We need to understand how we use the data we have and how we know who's engaging with us during the game to make sure that they're buying pizzas. Because at the end of the day, there is a value, a brand awareness value. As the world progressed to digital space, I think the brand awareness thing is getting a bit, it shrinks all the time. But at the end, when Papa John's need to choose between spending, $1 million on digital channels or spending $1 million with the team, we want to make sure that the ROI of the team is going to be higher. So that's a new way of thinking of sponsorships. And that's what we try to bring into the table using data. We try to make the teams and help the team understand that they need to be more digital. They need to think more like Amazon and more like Google and more like Facebook. Again, not in the arguable things Facebook and Google are doing, more in the, you have a lot of traction, you have a lot of engagement, and everything you do is you're keeping trying to get more engagement. You're spending so much on getting more engagement, and you're kind of like position this as a goal. The goal is not engagement. The goal is about performing using the engagement. So the new KPI we're bringing to the table, we call it engagement performance. How much does the engagement you have actually performed? What does it actually bring? What's the business objective that it helps solve? If there is, unfortunately, a lot of teams don't think that way. So we are helping them and we're educating them the potential and what could happen and how this could change an entire organization from being very, making decision based on hunches, moving to making decision based off what the fans actually needs. But I'm happy to say that, that's where the market goes. I think all the bigger player, especially in Europe, the FC Barcelona, the Bundesliga teams, the Chelsea clubs, and these size of clubs, they already identify that you're not measured by the number of followers you have on Instagram or TikTok. You're measured by how many of them you actually know, because that's where the challenge is really is. Beside on court, of course.
Yeah, we used to talk a lot about it in the space, things called vanity metrics, where it's just like, oh, I can get some cheap likes. And, it almost seems like now the smart organizations are treating most of these things like vanity metrics. Like if you're just really trying to get a bunch of eyeballs on a tweet or a bunch of retweets with a, witty line or something that you're doing, you're really, I think the smarter organization going, well, then what's next, right? Like, so how do you use your tools, and how do you help organizations take that step? And I've used your product with some of your NHL partners, and so I've kind of lived it a little bit. But please kind of share what's in the toolbox of getting that fan who might check out a Facebook page and like a post. How do you get them then into the club or the organization's ecosystem?
That's a great question, and I have to say that this evolves all the time. So as we grow, we keep building the tool sets for every part of the organization, but the very core of what we do, and one of our core values, is that the first step here is that we are engaging with fans, and we're continuing engagement with fans on the channels the team already have, and they're acting well. So we will not, if you're now launching a smaller team with a new Facebook page, we're probably not going to be the solution that you need. You need to have a solid fan base. You need to have engagement. The whole idea around Pico is to leverage this engagement and to ride the wave. So the core value here is that we are connecting to every channel the team has. And we don't ask fans to download an app, and we don't ask fans to change the way they behave. We're just saying at the first step, we create activations. And these activations are fun. These are places where fans could actually have a seat at the table. We sometimes ask fans for who do you think is going to score the first goal. During COVID-19, many teams uses us to ask fans what their favorite stay home t-shirt going to look like. So fans has a way to become active in front of the team instead of passively consuming content. So we're creating these activations. These activations are being promoted on the different channels. So the same activation could happen on Facebook using Facebook Messenger, on Twitter using Twitter DM, on the website, on the app, on text messages. It could be promoted on Instagram, anywhere. Then fans starting to play. They're getting into this game. And this game have many shapes, and there's many different type of games or gamification features. It's not always a game, but it's a gamified process. And during that process, we're doing two things. First of all, we let the fans understand that everything that is happening during this game is going to be stored and measured and stored about them. So we want to be very transparent with them. We also explain that none of the data is being sold to third parties. Everything is staying inside the team's ecosystem, but they need to know that if they're playing, we want to be very transparent. It's going to be used in order to provide you a better personalized experience. So you have, as a fan, you have the choice of staying, completely anonymous or dive in. The second part here is that during the activation, we ask fans important questions, things that are actually matters to the club. It could be who is your favorite player? It could be how many times you attended games, what's your email address, what's your phone number. This depends on what type of ERP or CRM system they're working with. That's how we connect the data at the end. And then again, every interaction is being stored. Every click you click on a link, or every answer you choose is being stored and being analyzed by our technology. And our technology take all this into considerations, measure all the different interactions, and then create labels on fans. And the technology could comes up and say, this fan is could be interested in last minute tickets. This one could be interested in merchandise. And again, it's a process. It's not happening on one time, but every interaction with a fan, we're learning more about them, and we're building more and more labels about them. So at the end of the day, when you're coming to our platform or to your systems, if we are integrated inside, and you want to say, I now want to do a text messages blast, or I want to send an email blast, or I just want to reach out back to you at the channel that you engage with me. Let's say Facebook Messenger for that matter. A smart team would use the segmentation we have and decide which message to send to which fan according to the segmentations we have. Some teams prefer to do a blast, and that's okay. But if you understand the value of data, you would push out the relevant messages to the relevant fans. And when you do that, the numbers are huge, are crazy. The click rates are crazy. The conversion rates are crazy. The satisfaction level of fans is crazy. Fans are happy to receive things that they're interested at compared to just seeing, the regular newsletter. So I would say this is our core. And as we grow, we are building and we are exposed to more and more gaps inside the industry. We're building more and more tools to solve these gaps. For example, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of communication between content guys and data people. or salespeople inside the organization. And our vision and our goal is to make sure that the data we bring from the content people is also going to be easily exposed to salesperson and to sponsorship people and to CRM people. So we have a set of tools which creates integrations into their Microsoft Dynamics and into their SAP, into Salesforce, whatever system they're working, they can easily integrate us inside. We're now building tools for content teams, because for us, content is really important. We want to make sure that the content we're posting for our teams is super engaging, so we can actually ride the wave. The more engaging the content is, the easier it's for us to understand who the fans are, and the numbers are higher. So we are providing content tools that integrates with, if they use Hootsuite or whatever, we can integrate over there, but also to provide our unique value propositions of understanding automatically what's the content that is supposed to be posted in the next 2 weeks, and which of these content is good for us to activate on. So we are making everybody's life easier in this process, to make sure they are running activations, learning who the fans are, and then reach out back to make them more happy with whatever business objective they have.
Yeah, there's some great stuff in there. And two of the things that kind of stand out to me when you're talking about this is, one, you understand you want to go to where the fans are. You're not trying to bring them someplace that they're not going to be naturally. And I think, it's important for a lot of reasons, but one, it ties into kind of the value proposition you mentioned, is there's so many distractions right now, and fans have so many places to go. They have so many alternatives as they're following a game, as they're watching a game. The level of expectation on from the fan side is rising all the time, and I think organizations really need to understand that what was a great post and what was great activation even 18 months ago, now is much easier to just kind of brush aside. So I think it's it goes into the message, but it also if you can get them to engage with something where they are in a natural way, where it doesn't feel like they're signing up for a newsletter communication, it's much more gamified, as you said. So a lot of great stuff to unpack there.
You talk about how to categorize fans, and something that comes to mind from the corporate world when you talk about things at Google or Amazon or just companies that are leveraging data are successful with, is something called Net Promoter Score. And it's the question that a lot of corporations ask is, how likely are you to recommend this brand to a friend or family member? And we all know friends and family members are the most likely that are going to take our opinion seriously. And so, when I think about what the tool that you're providing, is that you're providing a mechanism where they can really create, a fan promoter score, or understand how likely those fans are to turn other people into fans of their team. And they can focus on empowering and activating the people that are going to go out there and find new people to bring into the organization, and really grow their database through invitations. Something that Mark and I have worked on in the world of ticketing is that virality of sharing an event, right? And so when the people that are most likely to get excited about it, that's a huge advantage. So the next question I have for you is, so we're working with a graduate class of students this fall that are going to be coming up with their own startup ideas to use machine learning and to activate in the industry, as there's all this disruption happening right now. So I'm curious, how do you, without giving away your secret sauce, how do you leverage machine learning to mine through this data that you have, and what have you learned by doing that?
So we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning in mostly 2 places in our core value. The first one is on labeling fans. So like I said, we measure everything they do, and we store all the interactions, and then the algorithms are making decisions or making labels based on the interactions and how we classify different interactions. In sports, although it's a very rich world with lots of content and lots of things, when you go down and you kind of like tackle everything, it's pretty closed. So a fan could interact only on sum of different things. And the combination of those creates some sort of X amount of combinations possible. And that's how you can make an algorithm trained and understand how to connect the different dots and make different decisions. The second part of that is that when we are offering fans something, and offer tickets, content, or such, then our technology decide what's going to work best with which fans. So we're using the data we have in order to use the classification to know who to target. In a lot of ways, it's somehow similar to the way Invery, being very humble on to Facebook. That's kind of like what Facebook is doing. Facebook is putting a lot of content in front of you, measures everything, measure everything you look at, measure everything you clicks, and then at the end, decide what to show you based on other interactions you have. So the process is somehow similar. I see that Kiel.
Yeah, he said his internet just went out of his house, but he should be able to get back on the phone. And we're still recording, so we should be fine. I'll go ahead with another question or two, see if he can get back on. But one of the big topics, in all of sports and really all of society right now is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure that's something you've dealt with a lot with your partners. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about how your partners are adjusting, how your company's adjusting. And then, do you see this as, do you see the changes being permanent, whether it's on how fans interact with games or go to games or anything? I'm curious what you see kind of has happened so far, is happening now, and then maybe may happen in the future.
So for us, the COVID-19 really put a spotlight on what we do, because our whole claim always was for team that you can't really only rely on transactional data because it doesn't cover the entire fan base. And now during the COVID, the pandemic, there's no transactional data. So I would say during March and April, it was chaotic what happened with a lot of the team we work with and a lot of the new customers we brought in during this time, because suddenly they didn't have any data about fans. They have no idea what to do with them. There's no content to create. It was a huge chaos. So from a business, I don't want to say advantage on a pandemic, but from a business standpoint, it was a good grind of opportunity for us to shine with our value, because that's what we always said. You need to understand you need to understand what the digital engagement that you're having, that you're spending so much on, could actually drive for you. And we saw, a very wide openness from all clubs in all leagues globally. So nobody would now come and say, first party data and third party data, it's not a priority now. Everybody understand that they have invested too much to give someone else the data. And now they need to understand how to actually leverage that. So for us, it really was an opportunity to shine. I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, I don't know how the next season of the NBA and the NHL and even the NFL that is supposed to start, and the CFL in Canada, I know they are all partners of ours. They have tons of problems. I'm not sure how it's going to start. I definitely know that organizations that understand that fan bases are on digital and that they already invested in digital. So there's not a lot of more to invest. It's more about doing a small paradigm shift. It's not like you now need to build this. You already built that. But now you just need to execute on what you already built, because your focus is not in the right place. Organizations that understand that are becoming stronger. I think everybody took a major hit. So it's still soon to see, I believe there's going to be some ownership changes globally, and there's going to be a lot of administration changes like this. But at the end of the day, I think that if you are lean and you understand who are your friends and where your friends at, then that's you're becoming a bit less affected from these type of things.
Yeah, something we talk about, especially after COVID, is using data and new technology to capitalize on that. And one of the things that is new technology that I think paired with what you're working on could be very successful is voice e-commerce. Could you share a little bit about what you've explored and maybe some of the thoughts that you have around voice e-commerce and the data that you leverage on a daily basis?
So honestly, I'm a huge expert on how, voice activations works in sports in terms of buying things. Like, I don't know how many people tell Alexa to buy them a cap at the online store. I just don't have the data about it, so I'm not sure. But I definitely know that we have explored and we're doing things during these voice activation, whether it's Alexa or Google Home. These are channels that are being very well adopted, mostly in the United States. Um, we actually have Alexa in Israel, although I didn't really see lots of use cases for it yet, mostly because Amazon is not that strong here yet. But I definitely see on kind of like a second screen experience, especially with what we do. So you sit down home on your sofa, you're drinking beer, you don't have to stand up for a second or move. You can just say, to Alexa, hey, Alexa, I think this and this player is going to score the first goal tonight. And Alexa, transit this through our technology to the team. And then the team knows a bit more about you. And then when things comes and there's a good timing, they could reach out back to you and say, hey, we know you like this and this player. Here is his jersey in 20% discount because it's Memorial Day or Christmas or whatever. But there's one very simple concept we try to keep in mind all the time when you try to replicate it across the different, or across everything we do. But it has to be simple for the fan. You can't make the fans do any effort. And if fans engaging with you on Facebook, text, with text, or over Twitter with text, if they're now on the website, the experience need to be modified and proper for a website. And if you're now engaging through Alexa, it needs to be simple and for Alexa. So it's all about using the same usability fans are used to. So they will not need to change anything. I think it's a very fundamental core of engaging with fans.
Yeah, it's critical, and I think it's easily missed. People get a little too complicated in the activations they want to have, and they forget that, kind of like what we alluded to earlier, that fans have a million other things on their phone that they could be doing, or on their computer, or game, or that makes a ton of sense. My last question is, kind of similar to that, but what are the next kind of frontiers in this space that you're looking at? What are the kind of macro trends? Again, don't have to give any, state secrets from your business, but anything that, you think is going to be making a much bigger impact here in the next couple of years.
It's a very good question, because I think when you're looking at sport tech, you see different verticals. So taking away for a second from fan engagement or fan communication, that this is something we're heavily invested in. When you're looking at, building the perfect athletes and creating measurements and, the smart watches and the smart strap you put and measure everything you do, the smart trainers and all that, I think this is super positive as the world, it's kind of like doing the same disruption it's now doing on fan communication. It happened a few years ago on the way you train athletes. Understanding that every athlete has its own KPIs, has its own metrics, has its own, blood pressure and whatever, and he reacts differently and he needs different rest times. Like, you don't have one size fits all. And I think the same trend going now to what we do in fan communications. You can't treat all the fans the same way. You have to understand that these are unique individuals. And I think the number one challenge in sports, and it's actually a good one for the teams, but this is sometimes what keeping them back, is that fans are engaged by nature. You don't need to do a lot as a big team. You don't need to do a lot to make fans happy. You just need to have a 3-pointer or a touchdown, or a goal, and they're happy, and they will like your content and they will engage with you. Compared to other industries, if you're in the fashion industry or something else, you need to work hard to get traction. Here, you just need to be okay at what you're playing, and fans are engaged. And I think this creates kind of like a deception of how fans really are, because you're so much, it's so easy for you to engage with them, although you're creating a lot of content and the content is very high level and teams are very high level. But the fact that it's relatively easy sometimes create a barrier for them to understand that you can't treat all of them the same. So even if you look at email blasts, I think good teams have like 25, 30, 40% opening rates, which is, that's like almost 40% more, 400% more than the entire industry, any other industry. But still, it's only 40%. So there's sometimes there's like a vague on what's important and what's not, because sports is very, very noisy. So I think I was getting to a point of saying, like, exactly like they understood on the athlete side that you can't treat all athletes the same, teams start to understand that fans are not reacting well when you're treating all of them the same. And I think that's the biggest trend we're going to see. And it reflects everything. You see this on the video technologies, which allows you to see the replay and the angles that you're interested at, not the thing that the that the director of the production decided that you need to see. So there are lots of solutions which are all based on the same fundamental core, which is different people consume sports and sports team differently. Same with athletes who are treating sports differently. So I think that's the biggest trend. On our side, the biggest thing we are focused on is making teams' life easier, and lots of automations and lots of taking away from their plates, because teams are always understaffed, under budget, always in a rush. And we think we need to make their life easier. As much as we're able to get their life easier, they're happier with our solutions and our products, and we are able to help them do this paradigm shift.
That was really well said. I really enjoyed the part about the measurements of success between the industry as a whole and then sport business. Something we talk about the students is making that transition. Is it easier to transition from a non-sport industry into sport, or from sport into a non-sport industry? And there's learning points on both sides of that. And I think you captured that really well. Speaking about the students, we've reached the end of our time, and we have a tradition that we ask every guest to just look into the camera and share some words of advice for our students as they go out into their career.
Oh, you tackled me with that. I would say, at least for me, this is what worked for me. And just as a side note, I went to university relatively old. So I already had a business that I built for many years, and I was actually bored. So I said, okay, now it's the right time to finish my degree. So I think I started study when I was 28, maybe, or maybe 27. So I finished my degree when I was like 30 or 31, and Pico was already running. So I would say, go out and try and build and fail. I know it's a cliche. You need to fail. You need to fail because you need to learn what you're not doing right, but you also need to fail because you need to learn how to live with failures, because it's part of the life. And sometimes when you're doing the route of school and then college, or in Israel you go to the army and then college, they always treat you to be the best. And I think, again, it's more personal, but I think my biggest strength as an entrepreneur, that as a kid I wasn't such a good student, and I think I was used to fail. I wasn't a failure, but I used to fail. I didn't take failures that hard. And you need to go out and you need to make your hands dirty, and you need to fail or succeed. If you can succeed on the first time, I'm on board, but usually you need to fail, and you need to learn how to live with failures. And that's, I think, the most important thing on being an entrepreneur and building something, and the excitement of building. But I believe if you learn entrepreneurship, you already have it inside.
Join us next episode when we talk media activations and operations with Tiffany Hollins from UFC, Lizzie Seedhouse of the USL, and Megan McLean with the Special Olympics 2022 here in Orlando.